The dust rose in lazy spirals behind the stagecoach as it rolled to a stop at the edge of Dusty Hollow. Clara Jennings pressed her face against the window one last time, watching the scattered buildings shimmer in the afternoon heat like mirages that might disappear if she blinked. After 3 days of bone-rattling travel from Missouri, she wasn't sure if the town was real or just another fever dream brought on by exhaustion and uncertainty. "End of the line, miss," the driver called down, his voice rough as sandpaper. "This here's Dusty Hollow, such as it is." Clara gathered her traveling dress around her and stepped down from the coach, her boots hitting the packed earth with a solid thud. At 5 feet 10 inches, she didn't need the driver's offered hand, though she nodded her thanks anyway. Her height had always been a source of whispers back home. Too tall, too strong, too much like a man, they'd said. Maybe out here in the territories, things would be different. The driver heaved her trunk down from the roof, grunting with the effort. It was a simple pine box, scarred from years of use, containing everything she owned in the world: 3 dresses, her mother's Bible, a daguerreotype of her parents, and the $40 she'd saved working as a seamstress. Not much to show for 26 years of living, but it was hers. "Expecting anyone?" the driver asked. Glancing around the dusty main street, a few curious faces peered out from doorways and windows, but no one stepped forward. "No," Clara said simply. The letters she'd exchanged with Samuel Morrison had promised he'd meet her stage, but looking at the empty street, she suspected those promises had been as substantial as smoke. It wouldn't be the first time. 3 other men had written beautiful letters, painted pictures of life together on the frontier, only to take one look at her and find urgent business elsewhere. The driver tipped his hat. "Well, good luck to you, miss. The Sunrise Hotel's just down that way if you need a room." He climbed back up to his seat and snapped the reins. The coach lurched forward, heading to the next town, leaving Clara standing alone with her trunk in the middle of the street. The wind picked up, sending small dust devils dancing across the hard-packed road. Clara squared her shoulders and lifted her chin. She hadn't come all this way to be defeated by an empty welcome. Grabbing the leather handle of her trunk, she began dragging it toward the hotel, her muscles straining but holding steady. Years of hard work had given her strength most ladies didn't possess, another mark against her in the endless tally of her unfeminine qualities. "Would you look at that?" A woman's voice drifted from a nearby porch. "Big as a barn door." "Bet she could plow a field without the ox," another responded, followed by tittering laughter. Clara kept walking, her face carefully neutral. She'd heard worse. In Missouri, she'd been that Jennings girl who'll never find a husband. Her mother had fretted endlessly, trying to teach her to slouch, to appear smaller, to giggle instead of laugh. But Clara had never been good at pretending to be something she wasn't. The Sunrise Hotel sat at the corner of Main and 2nd, a 2-story building that had seen better days. Paint peeled from its walls like sunburned skin, and one of the shutters hung at a dejected angle. Clara pushed through the door, setting a bell tinkling overhead. The lobby was dim after the bright sunshine, and it took a moment for her eyes to adjust. A thin man with pomaded hair stood behind the desk, his eyes widening as he took in her full height. "Afternoon," Clara said. "I need a room." The clerk, his nameplate read Mr. Jessup, cleared his throat. "Of course. Miss, how long will you be staying?" "I don't know yet." She set down her trunk with a thump. "What's your weekly rate?" $3, meals included. He studied her with poorly concealed curiosity. "You here to meet someone family, perhaps?" "No family." Clara pulled out her money purse. "I'm here to make a fresh start." "Mr. Jessup's eyebrows climbed toward his receding hairline. "On your own, that's unusual." "So I'm told." She counted out $3 and placed them on the counter. "The room." He handed her a key, brass worn smooth from countless hands. "Room 4, upstairs. Breakfast is at 7. Dinner at 6. We don't serve unaccompanied ladies in the main dining room, but I can have meals sent to your room. Clara's jaw tightened.
I'll take my meals where I please. Mr. Jessup, I'm paying the same as any other guest.
The clerk's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. But the other guests, it's not proper. Then they're welcome to eat in their rooms. Clara picked up her trunk and headed for the stairs, leaving Mr. Jessup stammering behind her. Room 4 was small but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, and window overlooking the main street. Clara set down her trunk and moved to the window, watching the town go about its business. Cowboys rode past, spurs jangling. Women in calico dresses hurried along the boardwalks, baskets on their arms. A freight wagon rumbled by, loaded with barrels and crates. Dusty Hollow was bigger than she'd expected, with 2 saloons, a general store, a blacksmith, and what looked like a small schoolhouse at the far end of town. Church bells rang from a modest steeple, calling the faithful to evening service. It was rough around the edges, certainly, but there was life here, possibility. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Clara opened it to find a young woman in a maid's apron, hardly more than 16, with wide brown eyes and dusty blonde hair. "Begging your pardon, miss," the girl said. "I'm Lucy. Mr. Jessup sent me to tell you about how things are here." Clara stepped back. "Come in." Lucy entered nervously, twisting her apron.
It's just, Dusty Hollow ain't like other places. We get all kinds through here, cowboys, miners, gamblers. It's not always safe for a lady alone.
"I can take care of myself." "I'm sure you can, miss." Lucy's eyes traveled up Clara's tall frame. "But there's other things. The saloons, they sometimes, they offer employment to ladies who need money. And some folks might assume that any woman traveling alone must be looking for that kind of work," Clara finished. Lucy nodded miserably.
"I just thought you should know, so you can be careful."
Clara touched the girl's shoulder gently.
"Thank you, Lucy. I appreciate the warning."
After Lucy left, Clara unpacked slowly, hanging her dresses in the small wardrobe. The brown traveling dress, the blue Sunday best, the green cotton for everyday wear. Not much to start a new life with, but she'd managed with less. As the sun sank lower, painting the desert in shades of red and gold, Clara made a decision. She wouldn't hide in her room, wouldn't let fear or propriety cage her. She'd come west for freedom, for a chance to be herself without apology. She changed into her green dress, pinned her dark hair in a simple bun, and headed downstairs. The dining room buzzed with conversation that stopped abruptly when she entered. Every head turned, every eye fixed on her. Clara felt the weight of their stares. Some curious, some hostile, some calculating. She chose a table by the window and sat down. Back straight, hands folded. After a long moment, the conversation resumed in hushed tones. "Bold as brass," someone muttered. "What's a woman like that doing here alone? Maybe she's meeting someone. Maybe she's looking for someone." The whispers followed her like shadows. But Clara had learned long ago that people would talk regardless. Better to give them something real to discuss than let them invent their own stories. A waiter approached reluctantly. "Ma'am, perhaps you'd be more comfortable." "I'm quite comfortable here. Thank you. I'll have whatever tonight's special is, and coffee." He retreated, clearly flustered. Clara gazed out the window, watching the street lamps being lit as darkness settled over Dusty Hollow. Somewhere in this town, she'd find work, build a life, prove that a woman didn't need to be delicate or dependent to deserve respect. The food arrived, beef stew and cornbread, simple but filling. Clara ate steadily, ignoring the stares and whispers. As she finished her coffee, a shadow fell across her table. "Pardon me, miss." She looked up to find a well-dressed man with graying whiskers and a gold watch chain across his vest. His smile was practiced, his eyes appraising. "Thomas Hartwell," he said, touching his hat. "I own the Hartwell Trading Company. Couldn't help but notice you're new in town." "Yes. Traveling alone is dangerous for a lady. If you're looking for protection, or perhaps employment, I might be able to help." Clara set down her coffee cup carefully. "What kind of employment?" His smile widened. "Oh, various things. A woman of your stature could be quite useful. I pay well for the right kind of help." The implication hung in the air like smoke. Clara stood, using her full height to look down at him. "Mr. Hartwell, I'm looking for honest work, if you have any of that to offer. We can discuss it tomorrow at your office. Good evening." She left him standing there, mouth slightly open, and made her way back upstairs. Through her window, she could see the saloons coming alive with light and music. Somewhere, a woman laughed high and bright. A gunshot echoed from the edge of town, followed by drunken shouts. Clara pulled the curtains closed and sat on her bed, hands folded in her lap. The tears she'd held back all day threatened to spill over. What had she done? Coming here alone. What did she expect to find in this rough town that she couldn't find anywhere else? But no, she'd made her choice. Tomorrow, she'd look for work, real work. She'd prove that a woman could stand on her own feet, even in a place like Dusty Hollow. And maybe, just maybe, she'd find what she'd really come looking for, a place where being different wasn't a curse, where strength wasn't something to hide, where she could finally just be Clara. The night sounds of the frontier town drifted through her window, horses, music, voices raised in argument or laughter. Clara lay back on the narrow bed, still in her dress, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new stares, new whispers. But tonight, for the first time in years, she'd stood up for herself. She'd demanded her place at the table. It was a small victory, perhaps, but it was hers, as sleep finally claimed her. Clara's last thought was of the morning sun rising over the desert, painting everything gold and new. Tomorrow, her real journey would begin. The morning sun cast long shadows across Main Street as Clara made her way to the general store. She'd risen early, determined to find employment before the whispers and assumptions could take deeper root. The letter in her pocket, the last one from Samuel Morrison, felt like a lead weight against her hip. Morrison's Mercantile stood at the corner, its painted sign promising dry goods, hardware, and sundries. Clara had dressed carefully in her brown dress, the most modest of her three, hoping to appear respectable and capable. She pushed through the door, setting off a brass bell. The store was empty except for a man behind the counter, sorting through a ledger. He looked up at the bell's chime, and Clara's heart sank. It was Samuel Morrison himself. She recognized him from the tintype he'd sent. His face went through several expressions in quick succession: surprise, dismay, and finally, embarrassment. "Miss Jennings," he said weakly, You came." "As we agreed. Mr. Morrison." Clara kept her voice level. "Though I notice you weren't at the stage to meet me." He couldn't meet her eyes, focusing instead on the ledger before him. I didn't expect—" "You didn't expect me to be so tall," Clara finished for him. "So unfeminine." Morrison's face reddened. "Your letters didn't mention, and the photograph you sent must have been—" "Take conceded. Yes, but I never lied to you, Mr. Morrison. I told you I was strong, capable of hard work." "I thought you meant spiritually strong? Not?" He gestured vaguely at her height. "How could we? People would laugh. A man should be taller than his wife. It's the natural order of things." Clara felt the familiar sting, but refused to let it show. "Then it's fortunate we discovered this incompatibility before any promises were made. But you came all this way,
My choice, my consequences. She straightened her shoulders. However, since I am here, perhaps you know of anyone needing help. I'm skilled with a needle, good with figures, and not afraid of hard work. Morrison shifted uncomfortably. Miss Jennings, you must understand. Your presence here, unchaperoned, people will assume. That is, there are certain establishments that employ women. I'm aware of what people assume. Mr. Morrison, I'm asking about respectable employment. I'm afraid I can't help you, and frankly, it might be best if you took the next stage back east. Clara turned to leave, then paused at the door. Mr. Morrison, in your letters, you wrote about wanting a partner to build a life with on the frontier. Someone strong enough to face the challenges alongside you. It seems what you really wanted was an ornament. I hope you find her. Outside, Clara paused to catch her breath. One door closed, but there would be others. There had to be. She spent the morning going from business to business. The blacksmith took one look at her and laughed, saying he didn't need help that badly. The owner of the Sagebrush Hotel suggested she try the establishments on the other side of town. The elderly woman who ran the boarding house pursed her lips and said she didn't hire that sort of woman. By noon, Clara's feet ached and her pride had taken more beatings than she could count. She sat on a bench outside the land office, watching the town bustle past. Cowboys headed to the saloons for their midday whiskey. Merchants swept their storefronts. Women with baskets hurried past, avoiding eye contact with her. Rough morning. Clara looked up to find a man in a worn gray suit standing nearby. He was perhaps 40, with kind eyes behind wire spectacles and ink stains on his fingers. Is it that obvious? She asked. He smiled. I'm Martin Bellwether, editor of the Dusty Hollow Gazette. I saw you making the rounds. No luck. It seems the town has very specific ideas about what kind of woman deserves employment. Ah, Bellwether sat on the bench, maintaining a respectful distance. You're the lady who came in on yesterday's stage, alone. Guilty as charged. May I ask, why Dusty Hollow? We're not exactly a destination for... He paused, searching for words. Independent women of good character. Clara appreciated his delicacy. I had correspondence with someone here. It didn't work out as planned. I see. He studied her thoughtfully. Can you read and write well? Yes, of course. Do mathematics. I kept the books for my mother's sewing business back in Missouri. Bellwether nodded slowly. I might have something. It's not much. Helping with the newspaper, setting type, managing subscriptions. The pay is modest, but it's respectable work. Clara's heart leaped. I'd be grateful for the opportunity. Mr. Bellwether, come by the office tomorrow morning. We'll see how you do with a trial day. He stood, tipping his hat. Fair warning, Miss Jennings, Clara Jennings. Fair warning, Miss Jennings. Not everyone will be happy about my hiring you. This town has opinions about women working in offices alongside men. This town seems to have opinions about everything I do. Clara said, one more won't break me. After Bellwether left, Clara allowed herself a moment of relief. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She decided to celebrate with lunch at the cafe she'd spotted earlier. The Prairie Rose Cafe was smaller than the hotel dining room, frequented mostly by townspeople rather than travelers. Clara took a table in the corner and ordered soup and bread from a nervous waitress. She was halfway through her meal when 3 men entered, their spurs jangling against the floor. They were ranch hands by the look of them, dusty from the trail, already half drunk despite the early hour. Their eyes found her immediately. Well, well, the largest one said, sauntering over. You're that woman from the hotel, the one traveling alone. Clara continued eating her soup. Hey, I'm talking to you. He leaned on her table, his breath sour with whiskey. What's a woman like you doing in Dusty Hollow looking for work? I've found employment. Thank you. The men exchanged glances and laughed. Oh, she's found employment. Boys, bet we can guess where. The newspaper, Clara said calmly. Now, if you'll excuse me. The newspaper, the man's eyebrows shot up. Old Bellwether hired you what for? To look pretty. To work. Work. He said it like it tasted bad. Lady, there's only one kind of work for women who show up here alone, and it ain't settin' type. His companion snickered. Other patrons in the cafe had gone quiet, watching. You're mistaken, Clara said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Am I? He leaned closer. How much is Bellwether paying you? Because I bet we could make a better offer. What do you say, boys? Should we pool our money? See what the going rate is for her first night. Clara's hands clenched in her lap. She'd known this would happen, had braced for it. But the reality was worse than her imagination. I said, how much? The man reached for her arm. Clara stood abruptly, her full height causing him to step back in surprise. I am not for sale, sir. Not my first night, not any night. And if you touch me again, you'll regret it. The man's face darkened. You threatening me, woman? I'm promising you. For a moment, the cafe held its breath. Then the man laughed, ugly and mean. Big talk for someone with no protection. You think being tall makes you safe. You think anyone in this town will stand up for a woman like you. Jake, come on, one of his friends said nervously. Let's go. But Jake wasn't finished. You know what I think you're putting on airs, acting all high and mighty when really you're just holding out for the highest bidder. You're drunk, Clara said, and you're making a fool of yourself. Jake's hand moved toward his hip, where a knife hung from his belt. Maybe someone needs to teach you some manners. That's enough. The voice came from the doorway. A woman stood there, small, prettily dressed, with auburn hair and hard eyes. She couldn't have been more than 25, but she carried herself with authority. Jake Sawyer, you're disturbing my lunch customers. Take your friends and get out. Jake sneered. Come on, Ruby. You can't be defending her. She's trying to act like she's better than your girls. Ruby, Clara realized this must be Ruby Delacroix, who ran one of the saloons, walked into the cafe with measured steps. What I see is a woman trying to eat her lunch while you make a donkey of yourself. Get out, Jake. Don't make me call the sheriff. Jake looked between Ruby and Clara, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Finally! He spat on the floor and stormed out, his friends trailing behind. Ruby turned to Clara. You all right, honey? Yes, thank you. Ruby studied her with sharp eyes. You're the one who came in on yesterday's stage, working for Bellwether now. Starting tomorrow? Ruby's expression was unreadable. Word of advice. This town isn't kind to women who don't fit in the boxes they've made for us. You can be a wife, a whore, or invisible, trying to be something else. It's a hard road. I'm familiar with hard roads. Ruby smiled then, a real smile that transformed her painted features. I bet you are. Good luck, Miss Jennings. Good luck, Miss Jennings. And if Bellwether's job doesn't work out, well, I run a clean establishment. My girls keep their earning, and no one touches them without permission. I appreciate the offer, Clara said carefully, but I plan to make the newspaper work. We all plan things, Ruby said. Life has other ideas sometimes. After Ruby left, Clara found she'd lost her appetite. She paid for her meal and stepped out into the afternoon heat. The confrontation had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. Not the threats. She'd faced angry men before, but the casual assumption that she was for sale, that her worth could be measured in coins. She walked to the edge of town, where the buildings gave way to desert and sky. The landscape stretched endlessly, painted in browns and reds, dotted with sage and cacti. It was beautiful in its harshness, unforgiving but honest. A rider approached from the distance,
moving at an easy lope. As he drew closer, Clara could make out details. A lean man on a dust-colored horse, rifle across his saddle, wearing clothes that had seen better days but were clean and mended. He slowed as he neared her, touching his hat brim. "Ma'am, everything all right?" "Yes, thank you." Clara shaded her eyes to look up at him. He had a weathered face, honest eyes, and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. "Just checking. Don't often see ladies walking out here alone." He paused. "You're the woman who arrived yesterday. Heard there was some trouble at the Prairie Rose." News traveled fast in Dusty Hollow. It was handled. "Good." He studied her for a moment. "Name's Jacob McGraw. Got a spread about 5 miles north. If you ever need anything, well, folks know where to find me." Before Clara could respond, he touched his hat again and rode on, leaving her staring after him in surprise. It was the first truly kind offer she'd received from a man since arriving, with no suggestions or implications attached. Walking back to the hotel, Clara felt something shift in her chest. Perhaps she'd been wrong to think she had to face this alone. Perhaps there were good people in Dusty Hollow, hidden among the harsh judgments and crude propositions. That evening, she wrote in her journal by lamplight. 2 days in Dusty Hollow. Already I've been rejected, propositioned, threatened, and defended by the most unlikely ally. Tomorrow I start work at the newspaper. Mr. Bellwether seems decent, but I've been fooled by seeming before. The women here whisper behind their hands when I pass. The men see me as either a curiosity or a commodity. But I did not come this far to be defeated by narrow minds and wagging tongues. Mother always said I was too stubborn for my own good. Perhaps she was right, but stubbornness might be the only currency worth anything in this place. I will make this work. I will prove that a woman can stand tall, literally and figuratively, without apology or explanation. And if they don't like it, they can take it up with me directly. I'm done shrinking, done apologizing, done trying to fit into spaces too small for my spirit. Dusty Hollow doesn't know it yet, but it's about to meet Clara Jennings properly. The real one, the one who's been hiding all these years. God help us all. Sunday morning brought a different rhythm to Dusty Hollow. The constant flow of cowboys and freight wagons slowed to a trickle, replaced by families making their way to the small white church at the end of Main Street. Clara watched from her window as women in their best dresses herded children scrubbed clean for the occasion, while men walked stiffly in clothes they clearly wore only once a week. She debated attending services. Back in Missouri, church had been a refuge of sorts, one of the few places where her height mattered less than her soprano voice in the choir. But here, where every move she made was already scrutinized, perhaps it was better to lie low. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Lucy stood in the hallway with a breakfast tray. "Morning. Miss Jennings, Mr. Jessup thought you might want to eat in your room, seeing as it's Sunday and all." Clara took the tray but shook her head. "Thank you, Lucy, but I'll be attending church this morning." The girl's eyes widened. "Oh, miss, are you sure people will talk?" "People are already talking, at least in church. They'll have to whisper." An hour later, Clara walked down Main Street in her blue Sunday dress. She'd taken extra care with her appearance, pinning her dark hair in a modest bun and wearing her mother's small gold cross, the only jewelry she owned. If the town wanted to judge her, let them judge her in her finest. The church was nearly full when she arrived. Conversations died as she entered, heads turning like sunflowers following the sun. Clara kept her eyes forward and chose a pew near the back, sliding in next to an elderly woman who clutched her Bible with gnarled fingers. "That seat's taken," the woman said sharply. "I don't see anyone," Clara replied quietly. "It's taken," the woman insisted, sliding away from her. Clara remained where she was. If they wanted her to leave, they'd have to say it louder than whispers and cold shoulders. Reverend Douglas took the pulpit, A thin man with fervent eyes who looked like he'd been subsisting on scripture and desert air. His gaze swept the congregation and paused on Clara, his expression tightening. "Brothers and sisters," he began. "Today I want to speak about the natural order that God has ordained, about the proper roles of men and women in His divine plan." Clara's stomach sank. This was no coincidence. In Genesis, we learn that woman was created from man's rib, to be his helpmeet and companion, not his equal in stature or strength, but a gentle presence to soften his harsh edges. When women forget their place, when they attempt to stand where God meant them to kneel, chaos follows. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the congregation. Several people turned to look directly at Clara. "We see it even now, in our own town," the Reverend continued, his voice rising. "Women who refuse the protection of marriage or family, who walk among us bold as brass, taking work meant for men, disrupting the peaceful order of our community." Clara kept her face carefully neutral, though her hands clenched in her lap. She'd expected coldness, but not an entire sermon aimed at her presence. "Such women." Reverend Douglas's voice dropped to a dramatic whisper. "Open the door to sin and degradation. They become a stumbling block to the righteous, a temptation to the weak. We must pray for them, yes, but we must also guard against their influence." A woman in front of Clara turned around. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable elsewhere," she hissed. Clara met her gaze steadily. "I'm quite comfortable, thank you." The sermon continued for another 30 minutes. Each word another stone thrown at Clara's presence. By the time the final hymn was sung, she felt bruised and battered, though she'd kept her composure throughout. As the congregation filed out, Clara remained seated, unwilling to join the crush of bodies clearly eager to avoid her. She waited until the church was nearly empty before rising. "Miss Jennings." She turned to find Reverend Douglas standing in the aisle, his Bible clutched to his chest. "Reverend, I hope you found the sermon instructive." "Oh, very much so. I had no idea God was so concerned with the local newspaper's hiring practices." His face reddened. "You mock sacred things. I mock small minds that use sacred things as weapons." Clara stepped past him. "Good day, Reverend." Outside, she found Martin Bellwether waiting by the church steps, his hat in his hands. "I apologize," he said immediately. "I should have warned you about Douglas. He's been railing against working women since his own daughter ran off to San Francisco last year." "No apology needed, Mr. Bellwether. I knew what I was walking into." "Did you?" He fell into step beside her. "Miss Jennings, I admire your courage, but this town, it can be cruel to those who don't conform. I've noticed. I want you to understand what you're facing. Taking this job at the newspaper won't just be about setting type and managing books. You'll be challenging everything these people believe about the world." Clara stopped walking and faced him. "Are you withdrawing your offer?" "No." He met her gaze squarely. "But I want you to be certain. Once you start, there's no going back. You'll be the woman who worked in a man's world. That label will follow you. Labels have followed me all my life, Mr. Bellwether. At least this one will be of my own choosing." He smiled then, the expression transforming his serious face. "Then I'll see you tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock sharp." As Bellwether walked away, Clara became aware of a cluster of women watching her from across the street. She recognized one from the hotel dining room, another from the general store. Their faces were hard with disapproval. Clara started toward the hotel, but the women moved to intercept her. "Miss Jennings," the leader said. She was perhaps 40, with steel-gray hair and the bearing of someone used to being obeyed. "I'm Mrs. Abigail Foster, president of the Dusty Hollow Ladies Temperance Society." "Mrs. Foster." "We need to speak plainly. Your presence here is causing disruption. Good Christian women are uncomfortable. Our husbands and sons are being led into temptation."
I fail to see how my existence tempts anyone. Mrs. Foster, don't be obtuse. A woman of your proportions, living alone, working alongside men, refusing proper guidance. You're setting a dangerous example for our daughters. One of the other women chimed in. My Sarah already asked why she needs to marry if women can work like men. You're putting ideas in their heads. Ideas like independence, self-sufficiency. Clara kept her voice level. How terrifying. Mrs. Foster's face hardened. Mock us if you will, but we have influence in this town. We can make your life very difficult. More difficult than being sermon fodder and street corner gossip. You haven't seen anything yet? Mrs. Foster leaned in. Leave town. Miss Jennings, take the next stage east. We'll even take up a collection for your fare. How charitable, but I'll have to decline. Then you're a fool. No respectable man will marry you now. No decent woman will associate with you. You'll grow old alone, bitter and unwanted. Clara smiled coldly. As opposed to growing old in a loveless marriage to a man who sees me as property, I'll take my chances with solitude. She pushed past the group, but Mrs. Foster's parting words followed her. Pride goeth before a fall, Miss Jennings, and you have a very long way to fall. Back at the hotel, Clara found her hands shaking as she closed her door. The confrontation had taken more out of her than she wanted to admit. She sank onto the bed, suddenly exhausted. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Miss Clara, it's Lucy. Clara opened the door to find the girl holding a plate covered with a napkin. I saved you some Sunday dinner, Lucy said shyly. Figured you might not want to face the dining room again today. Thank you. Clara was touched by the kindness. Would you like to come in? Lucy glanced nervously down the hall, then slipped inside. She perched on the chair while Clara sat on the bed with the plate. Is it true you're going to work at the newspaper? Lucy asked. Starting tomorrow. Aren't you scared? Clara considered the question. Terrified, but I'm more scared of the alternative. What's that? Disappearing, becoming invisible, or worse, becoming what they expect me to be. Lucy was quiet for a moment. My ma wanted me to marry Billy Thompson. He's got a farm outside town, good prospects, but he's mean when he drinks, and he drinks most days. What did you do? Took this job at the hotel instead. Ma don't speak to me now. Says I'm too proud, thinking I'm better than farming life. Lucy twisted her apron. Sometimes I wonder if she's right. She's not, Clara said firmly. Choosing your own path isn't pride, Lucy, it's survival. After Lucy left, Clara spent the evening preparing for her first day at the newspaper. She pressed her green dress, cleaned her boots, and practiced setting type with a child's wooden alphabet blocks she'd brought from home, a gift from her father before he died, when he still had dreams of her becoming a teacher. As darkness fell, she heard the town coming alive in a different way than during the day. Music spilled from the saloons, punctuated by laughter and occasional shouts. Horses galloped past, their riders whooping. A woman's high laugh floated up from the street. Clara moved to the window, watching the interplay of light and shadow below. This was the dusty hollow the temperance ladies wanted to hide, the one Reverend Douglas preached against. Yet it seemed more honest than the Sunday morning facade, more real than the proper faces and cutting whispers. A movement below caught her eye. A lone rider moved slowly down the street, distinct from the revelers. As he passed under a street lamp, Clara recognized Jacob McGraw, the rancher who'd spoken to her kindly the day before. He looked up as if sensing her gaze, touching his hat brim before continuing on. It was a small gesture, barely visible in the darkness, but it reminded Clara that not everyone in Dusty Hollow wished her gone. She prepared for bed, her mind already on tomorrow. The newspaper office awaited, and with it, her first real chance to prove herself. Mrs. Foster and her Ladies' Temperance Society could whisper all they wanted.
Reverend Douglas could preach until his voice gave out. The men could leer and proposition and threaten. Clara Jennings had come to Dusty Hollow to build a life on her own terms, and neither heaven nor hell would stop her now. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought she heard her father's voice, warm with the Irish lilt that had never faded. Stand tall, Mo Store. If God made you to reach the high shelves, don't you dare stoop for anyone. Tomorrow, she would reach for everything they said was beyond her grasp. And if she had to stand alone to do it, so be it. She'd been standing alone her whole life. At least now, she was standing for something that mattered. The wind rattled her window, bringing with it the scent of sage and possibility. Somewhere in the darkness, a coyote howled, wild and free. Clara smiled in the darkness. She knew exactly how it felt. The Silver Dollar Saloon was in full swing when Clara hurried past, clutching her shawl against the evening chill. She'd stayed late at the newspaper office, losing track of time as she mastered the rhythm of setting type. 3 weeks into her employment, she'd found a measure of peace in the work, even if the town itself remained hostile. "Hey there, newspaper lady." Clara quickened her pace, but boot heels followed her onto the boardwalk. She recognized the voice. Pete Garrett, one of Jake Sawyer's drinking companions. "I'm talking to you." A hand grabbed her elbow, spinning her around. Pete stood too close, whiskey fumes rolling off him in waves. "You're working awful late. Bellwether keeping you busy." "Let go of me." Clara kept her voice steady. "Or what?" Pete's grip tightened. "You'll write about me in the paper. Or I'll break your nose." Pete laughed, the sound ugly in the darkness. "Big talk. You know what I think? I think you're all alone out here. No daddy, no husband, nobody to protect you." "She doesn't need protection." The voice came from behind Pete. He turned, still holding Clara's arm, to find Jacob McGraw standing in the street, hands loose at his sides. "This ain't your business. McGraw." "Let her go." Jacob's voice was quiet, conversational almost. "Won't ask twice." Pete released Clara's arm slowly. "Didn't know she was your woman." "She's not. She's her own woman. That's what you can't seem to understand." Pete spat tobacco juice near Jacob's boots. "You taking her part? People gonna talk." "Let them." Jacob stepped onto the boardwalk, positioning himself between Pete and Clara. "Get on home. Garrett, sleep it off." Pete wavered, clearly weighing his options. "Finally." He stumbled back toward the saloon, muttering curses. Jacob turned to Clara. "You hurt?" "No, thank you, but I could have handled him." "I know." He studied her in the lamplight. "Saw you knock Jake Sawyer back with just words. Figure you could do worse if pressed." Clara was surprised. "You saw that?" "I see most things in this town." He paused. "Walk you to your hotel." She nodded, falling into step beside him. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment before Clara spoke. "Why did you intervene? You don't know me." "Know enough. You're working hard, keeping your head up despite what folks say. That deserves respect." "Most people here would disagree. Most people here are fools." He glanced at her. "No offense if any are your friends." "They're not." Clara surprised herself with a laugh. "I don't think I have any friends in Dusty Hollow." "You've got one." They'd reached the hotel. Clara turned to face him properly for the first time. Jacob McGraw wasn't handsome in the conventional sense. His face was too weathered, his nose slightly crooked from an old break, but his eyes were steady and kind, and he looked at her directly, not up at her height or down at her body. Mr. McGraw." "Jacob. Jacob, can I ask you something?" He nodded. "Why aren't you put off by all this?" She gestured at herself. "My height, my working, my reputation." He considered the question. "My ma stood 5'11" in her stockings, ran our ranch alone after Pa died, fought off claim jumpers and raised 3 boys.
Taught me that a person's worth isn't in how they look or what others think, but in what they do when times get hard. She sounds remarkable. You remind me of her some. Same way of holding your chin up when the world tries to push you down. Clara felt unexpected tears prick her eyes. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me since I arrived. Then folks here are bigger fools than I thought. He touched his hat. Evening. Miss Jennings. You need anything, you send word. After he left, Clara stood in the hotel lobby for a long moment, feeling off balance. She'd grown accustomed to hostility or crude interest from men. Simple kindness with no strings attached was unsettling. You're playing a dangerous game. Clara turned to find Ruby Delacroix descending the hotel stairs, resplendent in emerald silk. I don't know what you mean. Ruby's smile was knowing. Jacob McGraw's a good man, one of the few in this godforsaken place. But good men can be the most dangerous. They make you hope. I'm not hoping for anything. Aren't you? Ruby adjusted her gloves. Word of advice. One working woman to another, guard your heart as carefully as your virtue. Both can be lost in an instant, but the heart's harder to recover. She swept out, leaving a trail of French perfume and uncomfortable truths. In her room, Clara tried to focus on the next day's work, but her mind kept returning to Jacob's steady gaze, his matter-of-fact acceptance. She'd built walls around herself for so long. She'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone see past them. The next morning brought new challenges. Clara arrived at the newspaper office to find a crowd gathered outside. Mrs. Foster stood at the front, flanked by her temperance ladies. What's the meaning of this? Martin Bellwether pushed through the crowd. Clara close behind. We're protesting, Mrs. Foster announced. This paper has become a den of impropriety, employing fallen women. I beg your pardon. Clara stepped forward. What did you call me? You were seen last night, consorting with men outside the saloon, then walking unchaperoned with that rancher McGraw. We know what you are. What I am is a woman walking home from work who was accosted by a drunk Mr. McGraw was kind enough to ensure my safety. Likely story. One of the women sneered. We know what really happened. Bellwether raised his voice. Ladies, this is harassment. Disperse, or I'll have the sheriff. The sheriff agrees with us, Mrs. Foster interrupted. He won't interfere with peaceful protest. Peaceful? Clara laughed bitterly. You're trying to destroy my livelihood based on lies and assumptions. Are they lies, Mrs.? Foster's eyes glittered with malice. Can you prove your virtue? Can any woman who lives as you do? The crowd murmured, pressing closer. Clara felt trapped, suffocated by their judgment and jealousy disguised as righteousness. Then the crowd parted. Jacob McGraw rode through on his dust-colored horse, leading a pack horse loaded with supplies. Morning, folks. He dismounted casually, as if finding a mob outside the newspaper was perfectly normal. Mrs. Foster, ladies. Mr. McGraw. Mrs. Foster said stiffly. We're conducting important moral business. So I see. He tied his horses to the hitching post. Actually, glad you're all here. Saves me making announcements. Everyone watched, puzzled, as he unbuckled his gun belt and laid it across his saddle. Then he pulled out the worn Colt .45 from its holster. This belonged to my father, he said conversationally. Carried it through the Mexican War. My mother carried it after he died, defending our ranch. It's protected my family for 30 years. He turned to Clara. Holding the gun gripped first toward her, the crowd gasped collectively. Miss Jennings, I'd like you to have this. Clara stared. I don't understand. Simple enough. You're living alone in a town full of men who don't respect boundaries. You need protection. His eyes never left hers. But more than that. This gun represents something. Independence.
The right to stand your ground. My mother would have wanted a woman like you to have it.
Jacob,
Clara's voice was barely a whisper.
I can't accept this.
Sure you can. Just take it. He smiled slightly. Unless Mrs. Foster objects to a woman protecting herself. Mrs. Foster's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. The symbolism was clear to everyone in the West. A man giving a woman his gun was a declaration of respect, protection, and something deeper. With trembling hands, Clara took the Colt. It was heavier than expected, warm from the sun.
Thank you,
she managed. Welcome. He turned to the crowd. Now, seems to me, folks have better things to do than hassle a hard-working woman. Don't you agree?
The crowd began dispersing, murmuring among themselves, Mrs.
Foster shot Clara a venomous look before retreating with her followers. Bellwether clapped Jacob on the shoulder. Well played, son. Just speaking truth. Jacob retrieved his gun belt. Miss Jennings, you know how to use that. No. Come by my ranch Sunday afternoon. I'll teach you. He mounted his horse. Good day, folks. As he rode away, Clara stood holding the gun, feeling its weight in more ways than one. Ruby had been right. Good men were dangerous. They made you believe in possibilities you'd given up on.
Let's get inside,
Bellwether said gently. We have a paper to print. Clara tucked the Colt carefully into her bag and followed him, aware that something fundamental had shifted. She'd come to Dusty Hollow to stand alone, to prove she needed no one. But maybe, just maybe, standing together was stronger than standing alone. And maybe Jacob McGraw, with his quiet strength and revolutionary respect, was showing her a different way to be free. The gun pressed against her side as she worked, a constant reminder of unexpected alliances and the dangerous hope blooming in her chest despite her best efforts to uproot it. The morning sun cast long shadows as Clara stood in the doorway of the Silver Dollar Saloon, Jacob's Colt heavy in her hand. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd spent weeks avoiding this place, and now she stood at its threshold by choice. You sure about this? Bellwether asked from behind her. Ruby's invitation was unexpected. It had been, the envelope had arrived at the newspaper office yesterday. Elegant script on expensive paper. Miss Jennings, I believe we have business to discuss. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Come alone. R.D.
I'm sure.
Clara tucked the gun into her belt, hidden beneath her jacket. She helped me once. I owe her the courtesy of hearing her out. The saloon was different in daylight, less mysterious, more shabby. Empty tables bore the scars of countless nights, and the air smelled of stale tobacco and spilled beer. Ruby sat at a corner table, dressed simply in a navy day dress, looking more like a businesswoman than the proprietress of Dusty Hollow's most notorious establishment.
Miss Jennings, thank you for coming.
Clara sat across from her.
Your note was intriguing.
I'll be direct. Ruby poured coffee from a silver pot.
I have a proposition, not what you're thinking,
she added quickly, seeing Clara's expression. I need someone who can read, write, and do figures, someone trustworthy. You want me to keep your books? More than that. I want legitimacy. Miss Jennings, this place makes money. Good money. But I'm tired of being dismissed as just another painted woman. I want to expand. A hotel, a restaurant, maybe even a theater. Respectable businesses. Clara studied her.
Why me?
Because you're the only woman in this town who understands what it's like to be judged before you're known. Because you're educated and honest. And because... Ruby smiled wryly. Hiring the most controversial woman in Dusty Hollow appeals to my sense of irony. I already have employment. Keep it. This would be evening work, a few hours a week. I'll pay well better than the newspaper. Clara considered. The money would help. But more than that, she was intrigued by Ruby herself. Here was another woman refusing to be boxed in by society's expectations. What exactly would I be doing? Keeping accounts, writing correspondence, helping plan the expansion. Nothing that would compromise your morals. I assure you, despite what people think, I run a business, not a den of iniquity. People will talk more than they already do. Let them. They'll talk anyway. Ruby leaned forward. We could help each other. Clara, may I call you Clara? You need allies in this town? I need someone with your skills and backbone. Together, we might just surprise everyone. Before Clara could respond, the saloon doors burst open. Jake Sawyer stumbled in, clearly drunk despite the early hour. His eyes found Clara immediately. Well, finally figured out where you belong. Did you? Clara stood slowly. Mr. Sawyer, you're drunk. Again. Not too drunk to see what's what. He weaved closer. McGraw's woman, sitting with the whore queen, birds of a feather. Watch your mouth, Ruby said coldly. Or what? Jake laughed. You'll get your girls to throw me out. Maybe I should sample the new merchandise first. He reached for Clara. Clara's hand found the Colt. She didn't draw it, just rested her palm on the grip. Touch me and lose the hand. Jake's eyes dropped to her waist, seeing the gun's outline. You wouldn't dare. Mr. McGraw taught me to shoot last Sunday. Want to see how good a student I was? They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Jake spat on the floor and stumbled back out, muttering curses. Ruby raised an eyebrow. McGraw gave you shooting lessons. He did. Clara sat back down, heart still racing. Said a woman alone should know how to defend herself. Practical man, also half in love with you. But I suppose you know that. Clara felt heat rise in her cheeks. He's been kind, nothing more. If you say so. Ruby's smile was knowing. About my offer. Clara made a decision. I'll take it, but I have conditions. Name them. Everything above board and legal. I won't be party to anything shady. And my name stays out of it initially. I'll be your silent partner until we're established. Agreed. Ruby extended her hand. Partners. Clara shook it, feeling like she'd crossed another bridge. Partners. As she left the saloon, Clara nearly collided with a man entering. He was well-dressed, perhaps 40, with silver at his temples and shrewd eyes. Pardon me, he said smoothly, then paused. You're Miss Jennings from the newspaper. I am. William Harland. He didn't offer his hand. I own the Harland Cattle Company. I've been meaning to speak with you. Clara's guard went up immediately. Oh, I've been watching you. Miss Jennings, you're clearly intelligent, educated, wasted on setting type. I could use someone with your skills in my operation. I'm satisfied with my current employment. Mr. Harland. Are you? His smile was patronizing. A woman of your qualities deserves better than scraping by on newspaper wages. I could offer you a comfortable position. Secretary, household manager. You'd have your own quarters. Generous salary. And what else would this position entail? His eyes traveled down her form in a way that made her skin crawl. Whatever duties we mutually agreed upon. I'm a widower. Miss Jennings, the house needs a woman's touch. Perhaps the position could evolve over time. The implication was clear. Clara felt sick. Thank you, but no. Don't be hasty. Harland moved closer. Consider your situation. You're already gossiped about, already compromised in the eyes of respectable society. Why not accept comfort and protection? I could make you respectable again. I don't need you to make me anything, Mr. Harland. His face hardened. Pride is a luxury you can't afford. What happens when Bellwether tires of the controversy you bring, when the good citizens finally drive you out? At least consider. The lady said no. Jacob McGraw stood behind Harland, his expression calm but eyes hard as flint. Harlan turned. McGraw, this isn't your business.
Miss Jennings is my friend. That makes it my business.
Friend. Harlan laughed unpleasantly. Is that what we're calling it? Jacob stepped closer. We're calling it whatever Miss Jennings wants to call it, and right now, she wants you to leave her be. The two men faced each other, tension crackling between them. Harlan was taller, broader, but something in Jacob's stance made him step back. Think about my offer, Miss Jennings, Harlan said finally. It won't remain open forever. After he left, Jacob turned to Clara.
You all right? Why does everyone ask me that? Clara said, frustration bleeding through. I'm not some delicate flower who needs constant rescue.
Never said you were, but even strong people can use backup sometimes. She deflated slightly.
I'm sorry, it's just, I came here to be independent, and I keep needing help.
That's not weakness. Clara, that's human. It was the first time he'd used her given name. The sound of it in his steady voice did strange things to her composure. I should get back to the newspaper, she said. I'll walk with you. They walked in comfortable silence until Clara spoke. Mr. Harlan offered me a position. Secretary, he said. But we both know what he really wanted. Jacob's jaw tightened. Harlan's got a reputation. You were right to refuse.
It's strange, Clara mused. I've had 3 kinds of offers since arriving here. The crude propositions from drunk cowboys, the calculated proposition from Harlan, dressed up as employment.
And then there's what?
She looked at him sideways. There's you, offering protection with no price attached, friendship with no expectations. I don't know what to make of it.
Jacob stopped walking.
You want to know what to make of it, I'll tell you straight. I admire you. Clara Jennings, the way you stand tall when everyone wants you to shrink, the way you face down bullies and busybodies alike. And yes, I'm drawn to you, but that's my burden, not yours. The gun, the lessons, the friendship, none of it comes with strings. You don't owe me anything.
Clara's heart raced.
And if I wanted to owe you something?
The question hung between them, dangerous and full of possibility. Jacob's eyes searched hers. Then we'd have a different conversation. When you're sure it's what you want, not just gratitude or loneliness talking.
How will I know the difference?
You'll know. He smiled slightly.
You're too smart not to.
They resumed walking, but something had fundamentally shifted. Clara felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with physical safety. At the newspaper office, she turned to him.
Jacob, thank you for everything.
Anytime. He touched his hat and headed for his horse. Clara watched him go, her mind churning. She'd come to Dusty Hollow to prove she needed no one, and here she was, accumulating allies and obligations and feelings she hadn't asked for.
But maybe that was the real lesson. Maybe strength wasn't about standing alone. Maybe it was about choosing who to stand with.
The gun at her hip reminded her she had the power to protect herself. But the warmth in her chest when she thought of Jacob reminded her that not all dangers could be faced with bullets. Some required a different kind of courage altogether. The routine Clara had built over 6 weeks shattered on an ordinary Tuesday morning. She arrived at the newspaper office to find Bellwether slumped at his desk, face gray with pain.
Martin, she rushed to his side. What's wrong?
Chest, he gasped. Can't breathe right.
Clara didn't hesitate.
Lucy, she shouted out the door, knowing the girl would be sweeping the hotel porch.
Get Doctor. Morrison, run.
She loosened Bellwether's collar and helped him to the small couch in the corner. His breathing was labored, sweat beading on his forehead.
Don't try to talk,
Clara said, though her own heart raced with fear.
Help's coming.
Doctor. Morrison arrived within minutes, medical bag in hand. Clara recognized him as Samuel Morrison's uncle, the same family she'd once hoped to join. He examined Bellwether quickly, professionally. His heart,
the doctor said quietly to Clara. He needs complete rest. No work, no stress. At least a month, maybe more. But the newspaper... Bellwether tried to sit up. We'll be here when you're well, Clara said firmly, pressing him back down. Don't worry about anything. They moved Bellwether to his rooms above the office, the doctor giving strict instructions for his care. As Clara descended the stairs, she found half the town gathered outside, drawn by the commotion. Is he dead? Someone called out. No, Clara said loudly. Mr. Bellwether is resting. He'll recover. What about the paper? This from Thomas Hartwell. The Merchant, Thursday's edition. Clara made a decision that would change everything. The paper will publish as usual. A ripple of disbelief ran through the crowd. Mrs. Foster pushed forward. You can't run a newspaper. I've been helping Mr. Bellwether for 6 weeks. I know the equipment, the accounts, the advertisers. The paper will continue. A woman running a newspaper, Reverend Douglas had appeared. It's unseemly, ungodly. What's ungodly is letting a good man's business fail when he's ill. Clara shot back. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. She went inside and locked the door, leaning against it as the magnitude of what she'd promised hit her. Running the newspaper meant more than setting type. It meant gathering news, selling advertisements, making editorial decisions, all while the town watched for her to fail. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Jacob McGraw. Heard about Martin, he said. You really planning to run this place? Someone has to. It'll be hard. Harder than what you've faced so far. I know. Clara met his eyes. Are you here to talk me out of it? No, I'm here to help. What do you need? The simple question nearly undid her. I don't even know where to start. Start with today. What needs doing for Thursday's edition? They worked through the list together. Clara had 3 articles partially written but needed more content. The advertisements needed collecting from various businesses. The press needed maintenance she'd watched Bellwether do but never tried herself. I'll handle the press, Jacob said. Used to help my uncle with his in Kansas. You focus on the content. You don't have to. Clara, he stopped her. Let me help, please. By afternoon, word had spread throughout Dusty Hollow. Some merchants came to cancel their advertisements, not wanting to be associated with a woman-run paper. Others, surprisingly, increased their orders. Ruby Delacroix bought a full page to announce her hotel expansion plans. Clara was interviewing the sheriff about a recent theft when William Harland entered the office. Miss Jennings. His smile was cold. I heard about poor Martin. Such a shame. What do you want, Mr. Harland? To make you an offer. I'll buy the newspaper. Give Martin enough to retire comfortably, and you can return to more suitable employment. The newspaper isn't for sale. Everything's for sale at the right price. He leaned on the counter. Be reasonable. You can't run this operation alone. She's not alone. Ruby swept in, followed by 2 of her girls carrying lunch baskets. Clara, I brought food. You need to eat. Harlan's lip curled. Of course, birds of a feather. Yes, Ruby said sweetly. Successful businesswomen. So rare in Dusty Hollow, though not for long. Harland left, but his parting look promised trouble. The women set up lunch in the back room. Clara was surprised to find herself relaxing in their company. Ruby's girls, Pearl and Violet, were intelligent and funny, nothing like the fallen women of temperance lectures. Don't let Harland scare you. Ruby advised, he's a bully, but bullies fold when you stand up to them. He owns half the town, Clara pointed out. And I own the other half's secrets. Ruby winked. You'd be surprised what men tell women they think don't matter. That evening, Clara worked late, writing articles and setting type. Jacob had fixed the press and gone to check on Bellwether.
She was alone when she heard glass breaking at the front window. A brick lay among the shards. A note tied to it, "Get out while you can." Clara swept up the glass, saved the note as evidence, and kept working. She wouldn't be intimidated. Wednesday brought new challenges. The bank manager informed her that Bellwether's credit line was frozen. Only he could access funds. Without money for paper and ink, Thursday's edition was impossible. Clara sat at the desk, fighting despair. She had some savings, but not enough. The newspaper would die, and with it, her chance to prove herself. Problems. Ruby stood in the doorway. Clara explained the situation. Ruby listened, then pulled out a leather wallet. "How much do you need?" "I can't take your money." "It's not charity, it's an investment. I believe in the newspaper, and I believe in you." Ruby counted out bills. "Pay me back when you can." "With interest, of course. I am a businesswoman." Thursday morning. Dusty Hollow woke to find the newspaper published as usual. Clara had worked through the night, and it showed. Ink stained her hands and exhaustion shadowed her eyes. But the paper was there. The headline read, "Dusty Hollow moves forward, business continues despite challenges." Below, Clara had written an editorial. "Change comes to all communities, whether welcomed or feared. Dusty Hollow stands at a crossroads. We can embrace progress, support our neighbors, and build something greater than ourselves. Or we can cling to old prejudices and watch opportunity pass us by. This newspaper will continue to serve our town with truth and integrity. That is my promise to you, and to Martin Bellwether, who built this institution with his own hands and heart. To those who threw bricks in darkness, I swept up your mess and kept working. To those who withdrew support, I found it elsewhere. To those who whispered I would fail, I invite you to read these words and reconsider. Dusty Hollow is my home now. I am not leaving. The question is, will you stand with your neighbors, or against them?" She signed it simply, Clara Jennings, acting editor. The response was immediate and divided. Some canceled subscriptions in rage. Others bought extra copies to show support. The Ladies' Temperance Society held an emergency meeting. Ruby's girls sold papers on street corners, turning it into an event. Through it all, Jacob was there, quiet, steady, helping without being asked. He brought her meals when she forgot to eat, stood watch when threats came, fixed what broke without fanfare. Friday evening, Clara sat in the empty office, tallying the week's accounts. They'd broken even. Barely. The newspaper would survive another week. A soft knock drew her attention. Jacob entered, carrying a wrapped package. "Thought you could use this." He handed it to her. Inside was a leather holster, beautifully tooled with a pattern of desert roses. It fit his father's coat perfectly. "Jacob, it's beautiful, but—" "No buts. You're wearing that gun all wrong. This'll be more comfortable and quicker to draw if needed." As he showed her how to adjust the holster, his hands careful and respectful, Clara felt that dangerous warmth again. This man who asked nothing, who gave freely, who saw her as she truly was. "Why?" she asked suddenly. "Why do you keep helping me?" He paused in his adjustments. "You really don't know." "I need to hear it." Jacob stepped back, giving her space. "Because you're magnificent, Clara Jennings. Because watching you fight for your place in this world makes me want to be better. Because—" He took a breath. "Because I'm falling in love with you, and I don't know how to stop." Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. "Jacob, I know, too much, too fast. I shouldn't have—" She kissed him. It was awkward at first. She had to bend down slightly, and neither of them quite knew where to put their hands. But then he pulled her closer, and she melted against him, and it was perfect in its imperfection. When they parted, both breathing hard, Jacob touched her face gently. "I don't want to be another man trying to claim you. Clara, I want to stand beside you, not in front of you.
I know, she whispered. That's why you're dangerous. You make me want things I'd given up on. Is that so bad? Before she could answer, shouting erupted from the street. They rushed outside to find the sky glowing orange. Fire at the church! The school's inside, someone screamed. The children were practicing for the pageant. Clara ran, Jacob beside her, toward the flames and the sound of children crying. Whatever was growing between them would have to wait. Dusty Hollow needed them both. The church was engulfed in flames by the time Clara and Jacob arrived. Orange light danced against the night sky, and smoke billowed in thick black clouds. Parents screamed their children's names while townspeople formed a chaotic bucket brigade. "Where are the children?" Clara grabbed Mrs. Foster, who stood frozen in shock. Inside the back room, they were practicing. Tears streamed down the woman's face. "My Sarah," without hesitation. Clara started toward the building, but Jacob caught her arm. "The structure's compromised. It could collapse any second. Then we'd better hurry." Clara pulled free and plunged toward the entrance, Jacob cursing behind her as he followed. The heat hit like a physical wall. Smoke burned their eyes and throats as they dropped low, crawling beneath the worst of it. Clara could hear children coughing and crying somewhere in the maze of smoke. "This way." Jacob had found the door to the back room. It was locked. The children must have barricaded themselves in when the fire started. "Stand back!" Clara kicked the door hard, her height and strength an advantage for once. The wood splintered but held. Jacob added his shoulder to the next blow, and together they broke through. 7 children huddled in the corner, the oldest, Sarah Foster, trying to shield the younger ones. Their faces were streaked with soot and tears. "Come on," Clara gathered 2 of the smallest into her arms. "Everyone hold hands. Follow Mr. McGraw." Jacob led the chain of children while Clara brought up the rear, carrying little Tommy Morrison and Annie Bellwether. The main room was an inferno now, the roof beams groaning ominously. The window. Jacob smashed the glass with his elbow, ignoring the cuts. He lifted children through to waiting arms outside while Clara passed them forward. A beam crashed behind them, showering sparks. Clara felt her dress catch fire and beat at it frantically. "Clara," Jacob pulled her toward the window. "You first?" The children are all outgo. She dove through the window as the roof collapsed behind them. Jacob followed, both of them rolling on the ground to extinguish smoldering clothes. Around them, parents wept with relief as they clutched their children. Sarah, Mrs. Foster crushed her daughter in an embrace, then looked at Clara with tears streaming. "You saved her. You saved them all." Clara couldn't speak through her raw throat. Jacob's arm was bleeding from the window glass, and her hands were blistered from hot door handles. But all 7 children were alive. "Get them to Doc Morrison," someone called out. The crowd parted as Clara and Jacob were led to the doctor's office, children and parents following. As doctor, Morrison treated their injuries. The story spread through Dusty Hollow like wildfire of a different kind. The woman they'd scorned had risked her life for their children. The rancher who'd defended her had bled for them. "That was foolish, Doctor," Morrison said as he bandaged Clara's hands. "Brave, but foolish." "Better foolish than dead children," Clara rasped. He paused in his work. "Miss Jennings, I owe you an apology. My nephew Samuel, what he did was cowardly. You deserved better." "It worked out for the best," Clara said, glancing at Jacob. Later, as they sat on the doctor's porch, watching the last of the fire being contained, Jacob spoke quietly. "I thought I'd lost you when that roof came down. Can't get rid of me that easily." Clara attempted lightness, but her voice shook. "Good." He took her bandaged hand carefully. "Because I meant what I said earlier. Every word." Before Clara could respond, a commotion erupted near the burned church.
Sheriff Watson had arrived with several men, including Jake Sawyer in handcuffs. Found him running from town with his saddlebags full. The sheriff announced, "Smells like kerosene, and he's got burns on his hands." "I didn't mean for the children," Jake started, then clamped his mouth shut. "You set the fire," Clara stood, fury replacing exhaustion. "Why?" Jake's eyes were wild. "Weren't supposed to be anyone there. Just wanted to burn out the holy rollers who looked down on us." The crowd's mood turned ugly. Parents who'd nearly lost children pressed closer, and Clara heard mutters of hanging and justice. "Stop!" Clara's voice cut through the noise. Despite her injuries, she commanded attention. "We're better than mob justice. Let the law handle him." "You defending him?" someone challenged. "After he nearly killed our kids." "I'm defending who we are as a community," Clara said. "We do this right, or we're no better than the lawlessness we claim to stand against." The crowd slowly dispersed. Jake taken to jail to await trial. Clara slumped against Jacob, exhausted. "You could have let them have him," Jacob observed, "after everything he's done to you." "Then I'd be no better than those who judged me without cause." She managed a weak smile. "Besides, I prefer my revenge served cold. A nice long article about his cowardice and capture should suffice." Jacob laughed, the sound warming her more than any fire. "Remind me never to cross you, Clara Jennings." Over the next days, Dusty Hollow transformed. The same women who'd snubbed Clara brought food and offers of help. Men who'd propositioned her tipped their hats respectfully. Children she'd saved drew pictures for her at the temporary school set up in the hotel. "Don't trust it," Ruby warned, visiting Clara at the newspaper office. "Gratitude fades. They'll remember their prejudices soon enough." But Clara was too busy to worry about the future. Between running the newspaper, helping coordinate church rebuilding efforts, and recovering from her injuries, she barely had time to sleep. William Harland made one last attempt, arriving as Clara worked late on Saturday night. "Miss Jennings." He didn't wait for invitation, entering and closing the door behind him. "We need to discuss business." "Mr. Harland, I'm tired and busy. Whatever you're selling, I'm not interested." "Not even in saving your newspaper?" He smiled coldly. "You see, I hold the mortgage on this building. Bellwether's been late on payments. I could call the note due immediately." Clara's heart sank, but she kept her face neutral. And I'm willing to extend generous terms, even forgive some debt. All you have to do is accommodate me, privately, quietly. No one needs to know." "Get out!" Clara's voice was deadly quiet. "Come now, you've proven you're a woman of courage. Why not be practical too? One night, maybe two, then your precious newspaper is safe." Clara stood slowly, her hand moving to the Colt at her hip. "Mr. Harland, I said get out!" "You won't shoot me, not the town hero." "Won't I?" Clara drew the gun smoothly, as Jacob had taught her. "You're threatening me in my place of business, making inappropriate advances. I'd be within my rights." Harlan's face went pale. "You're insane." "No, I'm done being cornered by men who think they can buy what was never for sale." She cocked the hammer. "Leave. Don't come back. And if you call that mortgage due, everyone will know why. I'll make sure of it." He backed toward the door. "You've made a powerful enemy. Get in line." After he left, Clara's hands shook as she uncocked and holstered the gun. She'd pulled it in anger for the first time, and the weight of that decision sat heavy. That was either very brave or very stupid. She spun to find Jacob emerging from the back room. "How long were you there?" "Long enough. Came to check on you. Heard Harlan's voice. Figured I'd wait unless needed." He studied her face. "You all right?" "No." Clara sank into a chair. "I just threatened one of the richest men in town. He could destroy everything. Or he could slink away like the coward he is." Jacob moved closer. "Clara, What you did took courage. Standing up to him. To all of them.
I'm tired of standing up, she admitted. I'm tired of fighting for every inch of ground.
Then lean on me for a while. He opened his arms, and after a moment's hesitation, she stepped into them. They stood there in the lamplight, her head on his shoulder despite their height difference, his arms strong around her. For the first time since arriving in Dusty Hollow, Clara felt truly safe.
Jacob,
she murmured against his shirt. About what you said, about falling in love. His arms tightened slightly. I meant it.
I know. She pulled back to look at him. I think I'm falling too, despite trying not to.
His smile was like sunrise. Good, be ashamed to fall alone. A shout from outside broke the moment. They rushed to the window to see flames again, this time at Ruby's saloon.
No, Clara breathed. Not again.
But Jacob was already moving. Come on, time to return the favor. As they ran toward the new crisis, Clara realized something had fundamentally changed. She wasn't running alone anymore. Whatever Dusty Hollow threw at them next, they'd face it together. The gun at her hip was no longer her only protection. She had something more powerful now, a community that had seen her true worth, and a man who loved her not despite her strength, but because of it. The fire raged ahead, but Clara ran toward it without fear. She'd already walked through flames once this week. She could do it again. The flames at Ruby's saloon were already under control by the time Clara and Jacob arrived. Ruby stood in the street, directing her girls and patrons in an efficient bucket brigade. Unlike the church fire's chaos, this was organized, almost military in its precision. Just the back storage room, Ruby called out. Seeing them, we caught it quick, lost some liquor inventory. Nothing more. Clara studied the scene with a journalist's eye. Something felt wrong. 2 fires in 1 week wasn't coincidence, especially with Jake Sawyer already in jail. Where did it start? She asked Ruby. Storage room window was broken. Someone tossed something burning inside. Ruby's face was grim. If Pearl hadn't been grabbing supplies, we'd have lost everything. Sheriff Watson arrived, looking haggard. Another fire. This is getting out of hand. It's Harland, Clara said quietly. Has to be. The sheriff shook his head. Can't arrest a man on suspicion. Need proof.
Then we'll get it,
Jacob said. Clara, you still have that threatening note from the brick. She nodded. In the office safe. Good. Sheriff, might want to compare the handwriting to any documents Harland signed. As the crowd dispersed, Ruby pulled Clara aside. This is because of me, because I supported you, bought advertisements. I've made you a target. We were already targets, Clara reminded her. Now we're targets who fight back. The next morning, Clara published a special edition. The headline read, Terror in the Night Dusty Hollow Under Attack. She detailed both fires, the evidence, and the patterns emerging. She was careful to make no direct accusations, but the implications were clear. The town buzzed with the news. At the hotel dining room, conversation stopped when Clara entered for breakfast. But now the silence felt different, expectant rather than hostile. Miss Jennings? Doctor. Morrison approached her table. May I? She gestured to the empty chair. I've been thinking, he said, about courage and community. My nephew was a fool, but perhaps his foolishness brought us something better. Doctor, you've shown us what we could be, not perfect, but better, braver. He cleared his throat. I'd like to place a standing advertisement in your paper for my practice. Others followed throughout the day. The baker, the seamstress, even some of Mrs. Foster's temperance ladies placed orders. The newspaper's finances, precarious for so long, suddenly looked stable. That evening, Clara was tallying the new accounts when Lucy burst in. Miss Clara Mister, Bellwether's asking for you. Clara rushed to his rooms. fearing the worst, but bellwether was sitting up. Color returned to his cheeks. "Clara." His voice was still weak, but clear. "Been reading your editions, every word." "Martin, you should be resting." "Hush, let an old man speak." He smiled. "You've done something I never could. Made this paper matter. Made it the heart of the town." "I just reported the truth." "No, you did more. You showed them who they could be." He reached for an envelope on his bedside table. "I've made a decision. Doctor says my heart won't take the strain anymore. It's time I retired." Clara's heart sank. "But the newspaper—" "Needs someone young, someone brave, someone who's already proven herself." He handed her the envelope. "It's all legal. Had lawyer Henderson draw it up. The Dusty Hollow Gazette is yours. Clara, building, press, debts and all." "Martin, I can't." "You can and you will." His expression brooked no argument. "I'm selling you everything for $1. Fair market value for a broken-down press and a mortgage Harlan's threatening." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Why?" "Because you're the daughter I never had. Because you'll do right by this town. Because—" He grinned weakly. "Because I want to see Harlan's face when he realizes he's dealing with the legal owner now." That night, Clara stood in the newspaper office, trying to absorb the change. Jacob found her there, staring at the press. "Heard the news," he said. "Congratulations, Editor Jennings." "Owner-editor," she corrected, then laughed at the absurdity. 6 weeks ago, I couldn't get hired to sweep floors. Now I own a newspaper." "You earned it." He moved closer. "Clara, there's something else. Word is Harlan's planning something. My ranch hands heard talk at the saloon." "What kind of something?" "Don't know, but men are nervous, choosing sides. Might be time to prepare for worse than fires." Clara touched the Colt at her hip. "I'm as prepared as I can be." "Are you?" Jacob took her hands. "Clara, what I'm asking, it's not fair, but I need to know where we stand. You and me, because if trouble's coming, I want to know what I'm fighting for." Clara's breath caught. "Jacob, I'm not asking for promises you're not ready to make. Just tell me I'm not alone in feeling like this is something worth protecting." She thought of all the reasons to say no. She'd come here to be independent, to need no one, but independence and isolation weren't the same thing. She'd learned that in Flames and Ink, in children's tears and unexpected kindness. "You're not alone," she whispered. "What I feel for you terrifies me, but it's real." He kissed her then, gentle and sure, a promise without words. When they parted, Clara felt steadier than she had in days. "Whatever comes," Jacob said, "we face it together." The attack came 3 nights later. Clara was working late again, preparing Thursday's edition. The first sign of trouble was boots on the boardwalk, too many for casual foot traffic. She reached for the Colt as the door burst open. 5 men entered, none she recognized, hired guns by their look. The leader, a scarred man with cold eyes, smiled unpleasantly. "Miss Jennings, Mr. Harlan sends his regards. Get out of my office." "Now, that's unfriendly. We're here to make you a final offer. Leave town tonight, or things get unpleasant." Clara stood slowly, hand on her gun. "I've made my position clear. So has Mr. Harlan." The man moved closer. "See, burning buildings is messy, draws attention, but accidents happen. Women traveling alone disappear all the time." Fear crawled up Clara's spine, but she kept her voice steady. "You're threatening to kill me." "Threatening, no. Just observing how dangerous the frontier can be." Clara drew the Colt in one smooth motion. "Yeah, it can be." The men laughed.
5 against 1. Lady, you might get one of us, but then what?"
"Then she gets help." The voice came from the doorway. Jacob stood there, rifle in hand. Behind him, Clara glimpsed Ruby with a shotgun, Sheriff Watson with his badge gleaming, and impossibly, Mrs. Foster clutching a rolling pin. "Evening, gentlemen," the sheriff said mildly. "Seems you're trespassing on private property." The gunman looked around, calculating odds. Through the windows, Clara could see more townspeople gathering, men and women she'd dismissed as cowards, standing together in the dark. "This ain't your fight, Sheriff," the leader said. "Threatening our newspaper editor, that's exactly my fight." Watson's hand rested on his pistol. "You boys have 10 seconds to clear out. Don't come back. Harland owns this town." "No, Mrs." Foster stepped forward, rolling pin raised. "We are this town, and we protect our own." The moment stretched taut. Then the gunman backed toward the door, the leader's eyes never leaving Clara's. "This isn't over. He promised." "Yes, it is," Clara said quietly. "Tell Harland he's lost. The newspaper stays, I stay, and if he sends more men, he'll find the same welcome." After they left, Clara found herself shaking. Jacob's arm came around her, steady and warm. "Thank you," she managed. "All of you." "No," Mrs. Foster said firmly. "Thank you for showing us who we could be." She paused, then added grudgingly, "I was wrong about you. Miss Jennings, can you forgive a foolish woman?" Clara smiled through tears she couldn't quite suppress. "There's nothing to forgive. We all have our journey to make." As the crowd dispersed, Ruby lingered. "Well, that was exciting. Think Harland will try again?" "Let him," Clara said, finding her steel again. "I'm done running, done hiding. This is my home now." "Our home," Jacob corrected quietly. Clara looked at him, at Ruby, at the town beyond her windows. 6 weeks ago, she'd stood alone at a stagecoach stop, unwanted and unwelcome. Now she had a newspaper, a purpose, and most surprisingly, a community. "Our home," she agreed. The next edition's headline would read, "Dusty Hollow stands together, unity defeats intimidation." But tonight, Clara simply stood in the circle of warmth and belonging she'd never thought to find, knowing that whatever tomorrow brought, she wouldn't face it alone. The Colt rested heavy at her hip, not her only protection anymore, but a reminder of the journey from stranger to citizen, from outsider to heart of the community. Jacob's gift had been more than a weapon. It had been a key to finding where she belonged. The morning after the confrontation, William Harland himself appeared at the newspaper office. Clara looked up from her desk to find him filling the doorway, dressed impeccably despite the early hour. "Miss Jennings." He removed his hat with exaggerated courtesy. "May I come in?" "It's my office. I decide who enters." Clara kept her hand visible near the Colt. "State your business from there." His jaw tightened, but he maintained his composure. "I've come with a proposition, a legitimate one." "Your last legitimate proposition involved threats and hired guns." That was regrettable. Overzealous associates acting without my full knowledge. The lie came smoothly. "I'm here to make amends." Clara laughed, sharp and bitter. "Amends? You tried to burn down my friends' businesses. You sent men to threaten my life. There are no amends for that." "There's always a deal to be made." Harland pulled out an envelope. $50,000. Cash. All yours. Just sell me the newspaper and leave Dusty Hollow. It was more money than Clara could imagine. Enough to start fresh anywhere, to live comfortably for years. For a moment, she felt the weight of exhaustion, the appeal of ending this fight. Then she thought of Martin Bellwether trusting her with his life's work, of children she'd pulled from flames, of Jacob's steady presence and Ruby's fierce friendship, of Mrs. Foster with her rolling pin, defending someone she'd once despised. No. Harland blinked. Perhaps you didn't hear the amount. I heard the answer is no. Not for 50,000, not for 100,000. This newspaper isn't for sale, and neither am I. You're being foolish. I own half this town. And the other half is learning they don't have to bow to you anymore. Clara stood, using her height advantage. Your time is ending. Mr. Harland, can't you feel it? His face darkened. You think you've won. Because some shopkeepers stood with you one night, I have resources you can't imagine. Influence that reaches to the territorial capital. I can make your life difficult, dangerous, lonely. Clara smiled coldly. You're too late. I've already survived all that. What else do you have? For the first time, uncertainty flickered in Harlan's eyes. He'd expected fear or greed, not this calm defiance. This isn't over, he said finally. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. Clara sat back down, picking up her pen. Now get out. I have a newspaper to run. After he left, Clara found her hands trembling. She'd just refused more money than her family had seen in generations. Part of her wondered if she'd lost her mind. That was impressive. She looked up to find Ruby in the doorway, having apparently witnessed the exchange. That was terrifying, Clara admitted. Both can be true. Ruby entered, closing the door behind her. But Clara, he won't stop. Men like Harlan can't bear losing, especially to women. Then what do I do? Ruby smiled, a predator's expression. We dig. Every powerful man has secrets. Time to find his. They spent the afternoon planning. Ruby would use her network. The girls heard everything in the saloon. Clara would research property records, business dealings, anything that might give them leverage. That evening, Clara was walking to the hotel when she noticed unusual activity at the train depot. Several well-dressed men were disembarking, their bearing official. Federal marshals, Sheriff Watson said, appearing beside her. Got word they were coming to investigate some irregularities. What kind of irregularities? Watson's smile was grim. Seems someone sent evidence to the territorial governor about illegal land grabs, forged deeds, intimidation of settlers. Can't imagine who. Clara stared at him. You had help. That young banker, Morrison, Samuel, not the doctor. Seems he's been keeping records of Harlan's dealings, waiting for the right moment. Your standing up to him gave others courage. Clara felt a surge of hope. Is there enough evidence? We'll see. But Harlan's about to be very busy explaining himself. As if summoned by his name, Harlan appeared down the street, surrounded by agitated associates. His eyes found Clara across the distance, blazing with fury. Best get inside, Watson advised. Wounded animals are dangerous. Clara spent a restless evening in her room, alternating between hope and fear. A soft knock interrupted her pacing. It's Jacob. She let him in, noticing the rifle in his hands. Expecting trouble. Always better to expect it and be wrong. He set the rifle by the door. Heard about the marshals? Also heard Harlan's been drinking and making threats. I can take care of myself. I know. He touched her face gently. But you don't have to do it alone anymore. When will you understand that? She leaned into his touch. I'm trying. 26 years of independence is hard to unlearn. Not asking you to unlearn it, just to add to it. He pulled her close. Be independent together with me. Despite everything, Clara laughed. That doesn't even make sense. Sure it does. Two strong people choosing each other. Not because they have to, but because they want to. She kissed him then, pouring all her fear and hope and growing love into the connection. When they parted, she whispered, Stay, just stay with me tonight. I don't want to be alone. He held her on the narrow bed, fully clothed, her head on his chest listening to his heartbeat. For the first time in memory, Clara felt truly safe. She woke to shouting in the street.
Dawn was just breaking as she and Jacob rushed to the window. Below, federal marshals were arresting Harland, who struggled against his restraints.
"This is a mistake," he shouted. "I own this town. I made it what it is."
"That's the problem," one marshal replied. "You don't own what you stole." Harland's eyes found Clara's window.
"You did this. You'll pay for this. You—" His words cut off as they forced him into a prison wagon. Other arrests were happening simultaneously. His foreman, his corrupt business partners, the hired guns from the saloon.
Clara dressed quickly and rushed to the street, Jacob beside her. The town was gathering, watching in stunned silence as their tyrant was removed.
"It's over,"
someone whispered. Then louder, "It's really over." The celebration started slowly, then built. People embraced in the streets. Mrs. Foster wept openly. Ruby popped champagne at 8 in the morning. "Don't celebrate too soon," Sheriff Watson warned quietly. "He's got lawyers, connections. This isn't finished." But for now, Clara allowed herself to feel victory. The newspaper's next edition would tell the whole story. Corruption exposed. Justice served. A town's freedom restored. "You did this," Jacob said softly. "Your courage started it all."
"We did this,"
Clara corrected. "All of us." As the sun rose fully, bathing Dusty Hollow in golden light, Clara felt something fundamental shift. The town that had rejected her, threatened her, tried to break her, had become her salvation, and she had become theirs. Samuel Morrison approached hesitantly. "Clara, Miss Jennings, I owe you an apology. And a debt. Your bravery inspired me to finally act against Harland." Clara studied the man who'd once promised to marry her, then rejected her for being too tall. He seemed smaller now, diminished by his earlier cowardice. "You owe me nothing," she said finally. "We all find courage in our own time." He nodded gratefully and retreated. Clara turned to find Jacob watching her with admiration. "That was gracious. More than he deserved." "Maybe, but holding on to anger would only poison me. I have better things to focus on." She took his hand. "Like the future." "About that," Jacob's expression grew serious. "Clara, I need to say something, and I need you to let me finish." Her heart raced. "All right. I know you came here to be independent, to prove you could stand alone, and you have, magnificently. But I'm hoping you might consider a partnership. In business, in life, in everything." Clara's breath caught. "Jacob McGraw, are you proposing?" "I'm proposing a question. Would you consider it not now, when you're ready, when you're sure it's what you want, not what you're grateful for or settling for, but someday?" Clara thought of all the proposals she'd received, crude offers from drunk cowboys, calculated propositions from men like Harland, even the fumbling promises in letters from men who couldn't accept her reality. This was different. This was a man who'd seen her at her worst and best, who'd stood beside her without trying to diminish her, who offered partnership instead of possession. "Yes," she said simply. "Someday, when we're both ready, yes." His smile was radiant. That's all I needed to hear. As the celebration continued around them, Clara stood tall in the morning light, Jacob beside her, their community surrounding them. She'd come to Dusty Hollow as a stranger seeking solitude. She'd found something infinitely better, a place where her strength was valued, where her differences became assets, where love didn't require her to shrink but invited her to grow. The Colt still rested at her hip, but it was no longer her only defense against the world. She had something stronger now, people who would stand with her, fight beside her, celebrate her victories and guard her back. And at the center of it all, a quiet cowboy who'd offered her his gun and, with it, recognition of her right to stand tall in a world that wanted her to kneel. It wasn't the ending she'd imagined when she stepped off that stagecoach. It was infinitely better. The town festival came 3 months after Harland's arrest.
Dusty Hollow had transformed. New businesses opened where fear once ruled. Families walked freely after dark. And the newspaper thrived under Clara's leadership. The celebration would mark not just the harvest season, but the town's rebirth. Clara stood before her wardrobe, considering her 3 dresses. After a moment's hesitation, she reached for the green one, the everyday dress she'd worn while fighting for her place here. It seemed fitting. "You look beautiful," Lucy said from the doorway. The girl had become Clara's assistant at the newspaper, learning to read and write with fierce determination. "Thank you, Lucy, though I think tall might be more accurate than beautiful." "Both are true," Lucy insisted. "Mr. McGraw won't be able to take his eyes off you." Clara felt warmth bloom in her chest. She and Jacob had been courting properly for 2 months now. Sunday rides, evening walks, stolen kisses when they thought no one was looking. The town had accepted it with surprising grace, perhaps finally understanding that conventional rules didn't apply to unconventional people. The festival filled Main Street with lanterns and music. Tables groaned under the weight of potluck dinners. Children ran between the adults' legs, their laughter bright in the cooling evening air. Clara moved through the crowd, greeting people who now smiled genuinely at her approach. "Miss Jennings," Sarah Foster ran up, clutching a piece of paper. "I wrote a story. Will you read it?" Clara knelt to the child's level, scanning the carefully printed words about a brave princess who saved her kingdom. "This is wonderful. Sarah, would you like to see it in the children's section of the newspaper?" The girl's eyes went wide. "Really?" "Really, bring it by the office Monday." As Sarah scampered off to tell her mother, Clara felt a presence at her shoulder. She looked up and up to find Jacob there, dressed in his best shirt, holding 2 cups of cider. "Thought you might be thirsty," he said, handing her one. Always thoughtful. She stood, still marveling that she could look him nearly in the eye. "Dance with me later. Try to stop me." The evening progressed with speeches and toasts. Mayor Hutchinson, elected after Harlan's removal, praised the town's resilience. Sheriff Watson thanked those who'd stood against corruption. Then, unexpectedly, Mrs. Foster took the makeshift stage. "I have something to say," she announced, her temperance ladies flanking her. The crowd quieted, curious. 3 months ago, I was a different woman, proud, judgmental, certain I knew right from wrong. Her eyes found Clara in the crowd. Then I watched someone I'd condemned risk her life for my daughter. I saw courage I didn't possess, integrity I'd failed to recognize. She stepped down from the stage and walked to Clara, who stood frozen in surprise. "Miss Jennings! Clara, I was wrong. Not just about you, but about what strength looks like, what virtue means. You've taught this whole town that standing tall isn't about height. It's about character." She extended her hand. "Will you forgive a foolish woman and accept my friendship?" Clara took her hand, throat tight with emotion. "There's nothing to forgive. We're all learning." The crowd applauded, and Clara found herself surrounded by well-wishers. Through it all, Jacob stayed close, his quiet presence anchoring her. As the fiddle music started, he led her to the dancing area. "Ready for this?" "I should warn you, I'm not a graceful dancer. Too many long limbs." "Good thing I like you exactly as you are." They joined the other couples in a simple country dance. Clara had to adjust her steps to avoid towering over Jacob, but he guided her with gentle confidence. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel awkward about her height, just grateful for a partner who made her feel perfect as she was. "Clara," Jacob said as they swayed to a slower tune, "there's something I need to tell you." Her heart skipped. "What is it?" "I bought the Hendricks place, the ranch adjoining mine to the south. Good land, water rights, sturdy house." "That's wonderful. Jacob, expanding your operation." "In a way," he met her eyes.
I bought it for us. For when you're ready. No pressure, no timeline, just possibility.
Clara stopped dancing. Around them, other couples continued, but she only had eyes for the man before her.
You bought a house for a someday that might not come.
I have faith in our someday. He touched her face gently. But if it doesn't come, I'll have extra grazing land. Either way, I win.
Jacob McGraw, she whispered. You impossible, wonderful man.
Is that a yes to someday?
That's a yes to right now.
His eyes widened. Clara, I've spent my whole life waiting to fit into spaces made for smaller women. Waiting for someone to see me as I am instead of what they wished I was. I'm done waiting. She took a deep breath.
I love you, Jacob. I want that house, that life, that partnership you offered. If you'll still have me.
If I'll... He laughed, joy transforming his weathered features. Clara Jennings, will you marry me here now? In front of the whole town? Yes. He kissed her then, right there in the middle of the dance floor, and the crowd erupted in cheers. Ruby appeared with champagne, already prepared for celebration. Mrs. Foster wept happy tears. Even crusty Sheriff Watson smiled. When? Jacob asked when they finally parted. Soon, Clara decided.
Why wait? We've both waited long enough.
2 weeks later, on a crisp October morning, Clara stood in the rebuilt church wearing her mother's wedding dress, let out and hemmed longer by the seamstress, who'd done it as a gift. Lucy stood as her bridesmaid, Ruby as her witness. The church overflowed with townspeople who'd come to celebrate not just a wedding, but a symbol of how far they'd all come. Reverend Douglas had been replaced by young Pastor Williams, who spoke of love as partnership, of marriage as two people choosing to stand together rather than one bowing to another, when he pronounced them husband and wife. Clara had to bend only slightly to kiss her husband, and the congregation laughed with delight rather than mockery. The reception filled the street outside the newspaper office, Clara's newspaper, which she would continue to run with Jacob's full support, as they danced their first dance as husband and wife. Clara noticed the Colt .45 displayed in the office window, a reminder of where this journey had begun. Regrets? Jacob asked, following her gaze.
None, not one.
She smiled at her husband.
That gun brought me more than protection. It brought me you.
Technically, I brought you the gun.
Semantics,
she laughed. As the sun set over Dusty Hollow, painting the desert in shades of gold and red, Clara McGraw, née Jennings, stood tall among her community, her husband beside her, her future bright with possibility. She'd come seeking independence and found interdependence. She'd expected isolation and discovered belonging. The girl who'd been too tall, too strong, too much, had become exactly enough for a town that learned to measure worth by character rather than conformity. Ruby raised a toast. To Clara McGraw, newspaper owner, firefighter, truth-teller, and living proof that the best revenge against those who try to make you small is to stand tall anyway. The crowd cheered, and Clara felt tears slip down her cheeks. Happy tears, grateful tears, tears of a woman who'd finally found her place in the world. As the celebration continued into the night, Clara danced with her husband, laughed with her friends, and planned tomorrow's edition in her head. The headline would read, New Beginnings, a Love Story for the Ages. But the real story of a woman who refused to shrink, a cowboy who saw her worth, and a town that learned to embrace difference. That story would be told for generations. It would inspire other women to stand tall, other men to offer partnership instead of possession, other communities to choose courage over convention. The Colt .45 gleamed in the window, no longer needed but never forgotten. It had been her protection, her symbol, her bridge to belonging. Now it was her history, displayed with pride in the newspaper office where a tall woman had made her stand and won more than she'd ever dared to dream. In the end, Clara hadn't just kept her first night. She'd claimed her whole life, and in a dusty western town that learned to measure strength in courage rather than conformity, she lived it fully, proudly, and tall. The stars emerged over Dusty Hollow, brilliant in the clear desert sky, and beneath them, a woman who'd arrived alone and afraid danced in the arms of love, surrounded by community, finally and forever home. Thank you so much for listening to this story of courage, love, and standing tall in the face of adversity. I'd love to know where in the world you're listening from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect and discuss Clara's incredible journey together. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Wild West Stories 1850 and hit that like button. And don't forget to press the hype button to help more people discover this tale of strength and love in the Old West. Until our next adventure on the frontier, keep standing tall, partners.